Well, great late morning. I usually say great morning because this is a early morning show. So hello to whoever's out there. And just remember, if you're watching this in the live format in the Rise Up with Dragon Facebook group, give us a comment. Tell us, especially if you're part of the crew that I just met in the jungle. You can just, in the comments, when you comment, we'll be able to see them. So tell us where you're coming from. And if you have any questions during the duration of this, feel free to ask them. So yeah, this is your boy, Dr. JC, AKA the Dragon. And, as many of you know, because I've been speaking about it a lot, I recently, after 4 years of picking it apart and looking at it with my analytical mind, I finally just accepted the calling and went to the Amazon jungle, which is a whole topic that we'll talk about. And I experienced, sitting with plant medicine, completely unknown what this was going to be like, but I knew that it just felt right. So some of that story will come out naturally in this interview. But what I want to do is couple my experience, but also with an interview of a very, very special person that I had the opportunity to meet there. And this is Jose Saenz. How do I pronounce your last name? I never asked you.
Saenz.
Saenz. Okay. Saenz, correct?
Correct.
Jose Saenz. And Jose is the owner and, chief Dharma officer. Look up Dharma, by the way. It's a very cool word to look up and you'll understand what that means. But anyway, I had the luxury of, in my first experience, meeting the guy that owns this and some of his head facilitators. And I know that he's not always there. He's very often there. But what an amazing individual this is, who, in my opinion, after doing all this research, he's kind of like, as I refer to, the big cheese, maybe, of ayahuasca and plant medicine, because he's doing it right. And he and I have forged a wonderful friendship that has carried on even after. So I want to welcome to the Rise Up with Dragon show / podcast, Jose Saenz. How are you, my friend?
Morning, JC. Thank you for hosting me. It's a pleasure to be here.
And now you're in Arizona right now.
Yeah, I actually got to come home for a few weeks, so I'm enjoying the downtime here in the desert.
Yeah, it's probably hot there. It's cold where I am. So people are filing in, and I see some people, saying hi to you.
Hey, Bob.
Yeah, that's right. Robert's here, and so we're gonna hear a lot of people that have either experienced this or are planning on it. So what I want to do, we're not going to have time to go through my whole experience. I've actually in the process of writing a book about the whole thing. The book is going to be called "Bring Forth My First Time with Ayahuasca." And I don't know if I told you this, but during every ceremony, while I was actually in ceremony, which was not very easy to do, I actually had my journal with me and I made an attempt to write everything that happened down. Now, at some point, we'll have to give you some screenshots and show you what it actually looks like. But it's quite amazing because I'm going to be able to share all that stuff, so that's coming soon. So let's start off, Jose. On this show, we always look at what people do, but it's always important to look at why they do it. Let's talk a little bit about your background, because it's a pretty interesting thing. I believe you started working with plant medicine about 6 years ago, before this amazing facility came into play. So just share a little bit, because I know that, Jose is went to an Ivy League school. He's lived this life where he had all the things that most people think that they want with money and all that. He was on Wall Street. And I think he found himself very much like me, depressed and for some reason and upset, which led him to the calling. So share with us a little bit of your background.
Sure. Well, I like to say that my path with the medicine started when I was 19. When I was in college at 19, a good friend of mine gave me a book about peyote. It's authored by Carlos Castañeda. And at the time, I was very interested in, what the world of shamanism, this, new world of plants that seemed to me. So I found myself getting a lot of existentialist questions. Why are we here? But unfortunately, I couldn't get any answers. So I said, okay, put that aside and let's go with what seemed to be the proven route to success, which in my mind was find a good woman to marry, have lots of kids, make lots of money, and that was happiness. So I went on that route. Like you said, I ended up going to an Ivy League. I went to Harvard. I got an MBA at Harvard. I ended up working in Wall Street for a couple of years. I started my family, and things were going great. But when I checked all the boxes, there was something missing. So I was depressed. My personal life sort of started falling apart at some point. And 20 years after I basically put that book aside, I ended up splitting up, divorcing, and it was then that I decided to pick up where I left off, at 19. So about 10 years ago, I decided to do peyote first. One day I just felt a calling. I Googled peyote. There happened to be a place only 2.5 hours away from my house here in Arizona called the Peyote Way Church. And that was my first ever psychedelic and experience with plant medicine. And it was a bit different than what we do in our retreats. You're basically by yourself in the desert with your cup of peyote, like no shaman, nothing else. And it was quite an interesting night. Let's put it that way. Peyote led me to ayahuasca, and here we are. I found my way to the Amazon like yourself 9 years ago. I ended up going to another ayahuasca retreat, and ayahuasca forever changed my life. So here we are 9 years later.
So what's interesting about hearing that is, he's the, I think I saw somebody call you, Luis calls you the Master Pepe. So, I kind of look at you like that as well. We're hearing it from him, and even he tells a story of being called. And I know what that was like for me. But let's talk a little bit more about that, because, when you come home from a retreat like this and a lot of people, that might be the first time they've heard about it, or they might say, oh, I've been thinking about doing that. I met some people on the plane and shared what it was that I had just done. And they said, oh man, that's so cool. I've been thinking about that. So now that I've done it, I realize what it means to be called to do it, because what I find, Jose, as I come back, is I'm refraining from telling people that they should think about doing it. And the reason why I'm doing that is because I know the organic nature of it. But you said you found, you went through what you went through, and people will start commenting on what it means to be called to do it. And some people might be watching this right now. They've never done it and they feel the calling, but they just don't know it's the calling. But you went through that, somewhat chaotic phase of your life. And then you said that you were called to do peyote. And then that, led you to the jungle. What does it mean to be called to do that? Because on the outside looking in, with my rational mind, that's where I started to say, like, ooh, this is a little mysterious. I understand it now. But talk a little bit about that, because there's a lot of people who are going to watch this and listen to this and resonate with this idea that they're being called.
In my case, I felt like an inner voice, and going back to the book and just living through his experience. This book was about this anthropologist who goes down to the Southwest. He meets a shaman, and he's basically initiated into the world of shamanism. So, I'd say that I'm a very adventurous soul. Like I'm curious about a lot of things. I have lots of questions, and to me, being called is to really listen to that inner voice that's screaming for help. At the time, I was in the middle of, huge distress in my personal life. I was trying to seek answers. I couldn't find them, and this story that was fed to me by society, by my parents, I didn't find the happiness. So I was pretty upset about this when I basically did what I thought that was gonna, you know, end up in happiness. It was quite the opposite, no? So I think when you are in that distress and you have this inner feeling that something is missing, you start looking for answers, and you connect deeply with that voice that tells you, yeah, I mean, do this or go here. Um, I mean, you can call it intuition, you can call it um, self-guidance, but in my case, that's how I ended up going to the peyote place, no?
Yeah, it's really interesting, and I'm sure a lot of people resonate with that. But I know from experience, but also from all the research that I did with my highly analytical brain, that I very much don't resonate with anymore. Sometimes there's some symptoms that show up in relation to that calling that push people there. I know a lot of people that have had experienced PTSD, and I know depression, anxiety. We're not saying that this is a way of treating them, but that's part of the reason why a lot of people go out there. And with the rational mind, and if you're following the herd mentality and you're just listening to what you've been told to think your whole life, it could seem somewhat controversial. And I would assume that's probably because people don't understand what plant medicine really is. So I want to get into that. I want to get into this concept of plant medicine, because when I first thought about doing it, I heard all these people, say that they did it. People that I really respected, and I watched their lives completely transform, and I'm always an observer of that. But at the same time, watching all these movies like, The Doors, and, just I assumed it was going to be more of an experience, some sort of like, I'm going to climb up on a mountain and do something and find my eagle spirit or something like that. And I looked at it from the outside in, that I was going to go do something and feel something, right? Or something like that. I had no idea what it was. Um, let's start off by, let's start with ayahuasca, because interestingly enough, ayahuasca used to be used just by shamans, right? I mean, so I'd like to talk about what ayahuasca is, why it has the power that it has, but also how it's kind of like evolved from something that shamans, correct me if I'm wrong, shamans would take ayahuasca to empower themselves to heal others. Am I right?
Yes, correct. Yeah, I also want to add a little context. In my case, I grew up in Mexico, like with a very conservative family. I started dating my ex-wife when I was 16, and in her family, drugs were frowned upon. It was something that only stupid people would do. So I grew up with that. Um, I smoked my first joint at 37 or 38 when I separated from her, because I'd grown up with this. So in my mind, all of these plants, they were drugs, and drugs have a negative connotation. We think of abuse, we think of addiction, but it was my ignorance that was thinking that, and this is why it was such a taboo topic. Once I decided to really do some research about it, I found that they're not drugs, or they're not recreational drugs. They're medicine, and I think that makes all the difference when we approach these plant medicines as something that heals, and it's not there for to get high and just to trip out. Things take a different meaning. So I just wanted to throw that context in there. So ayahuasca, like you say, it's a brew. It's a concoction of two plants. There's many different recipes, because ayahuasca has been used for hundreds of years. I mean, there's really no no one really knows the origins when people start drinking it, but they say that it goes back as far as 1,000 years or maybe more. And people have been using it all along the Amazon basin, more specifically the countries of Ecuador, Colombia, Peru, Brazil. And in Peru, back in the old days, they say that it was only the shamans that would drink the medicine. So this medicine, it's made up of two plants. Like in the simplest form, the recipe our shamans use, it's only two plants. It's the ayahuasca vine and the chacruna leaf. The chacruna leaf has a DMT, and the ayahuasca vine has a MAOI inhibitor. So basically, when you combine these two plants, it creates the ayahuasca brew that produces the magic, pretty much. In the old days, it was only the shamans that would drink the medicine, and they would do this to enter into a trance, so they would enter the world of plant spirits. And this is how they, through the medicine songs that they sing in ceremony called the Icaros, that's how they used to heal people. So the patients, they would benefit from the healing just by sitting in ceremony with this shaman and just by receiving these medicine songs. So yeah, that's a way, they used to work with this medicine for many years. And it was only in recent years when they decided that it was a good idea to share it with the patients so they could speed up the healing process with people.
So fascinating. And I just want to set the record straight, just from my own personal experience, because it would be impossible for me to explain to you what happened while I was there, because, I would either just be thrown in jail or just misunderstood, just because it was my experience. And, we know how there's a thunderstorm of thoughts in our head. But from my own experience, when I was young, similar to you, I played with all sorts of drugs, and I didn't say no to many things when I was a kid. But it was fun, and I guess I could say it was enlightening, but it was not as productive, and transformative as what I've just done. But I would say for the past almost 10 years, I mean, it's the nature of my business. I'm a transformational health coach. There's very few people that live like I do. I mean, I don't even drink, I don't smoke. I don't even smoke pot, nothing, I can't even remember the last time I did a drug. So, I very much resonated with the idea of plant medicine, because I wasn't looking for a good time. And a lot of people, when I came back, Jose, they said, was it fun? How do I answer that question? I mean, when I look at it, I said it was really fun to meet Jose, and I built all these wonderful, I have friendships that are going to last a lifetime. And we have follow-up huddles that we're going to do, and being with those people and supportive, it's fun, but it was work, and that's something that I didn't know from the outside looking in. If you're somebody and you're listening to this, and you're kind of on a journey of personal growth and self-discovery, you're looking at someone right here that's probably spent $200,000-$300,000 on personal growth and discovery. I mean, I read a book every week. Shout out to my friend Jim Quick, who taught me how to speed read. There's very little about personal growth and self-discovery that I don't know. And I found myself, when I was feeling the calling, I was curious and interested. But when I got to the point where Martin Luther King calls it the fierce urgency of now, I felt pulled to it, to go by myself, fly to a place I've never been. And I don't know if you know this, Jose, but like 3 days before I flew there, I didn't tell my wife this because she said I could come. 3 days before I flew there was a freak accident at the Lima airport, which is a beautiful airport, by the way, just as nice as any airport you've ever seen, where a plane was taking off and like hit a fire truck or something like that. So I'm like, man, I hope my wife doesn't watch that. So that calling was strong enough to bring me out there. And I would say the reason why I went out there, and, as a father with a lot of responsibility to go out there, fly to another place called Iquitos that I never knew about, which is a beautiful, beautiful place. Take an hour and a half bus ride, and then get in a small boat where if you stand up, it could tip over, for almost 2 hours down the Amazon River to go to this place. So, the calling was strong enough for that. But what I found, and I'd love you to talk a little bit about this, I find that I've gotten to a point where in my life where I can continue to do personal growth and self-discovery, and there's value in that, and I will. But I noticed that my programmed and analytical / rational mind always gets in the way. So what I was looking for, and I found an experience that I could say right now, I'm 51 years old, Jose. That was the most enlightening, profound, transformative experience of my entire life, And I'm just waiting for your website to populate the dates that I want so I can book. I'm going to go 2 weeks next time, and I'm going to bring some friends. But I wanted to experience what it would be like to look at life without my analytical mind. I wanted to shed my judgmental, programmed analytical mind. And I was hoping that's what it would do. And that's what I found there. I found that I could communicate and learn things while in ceremony and not get in the way of them. Why is that? What is it about ayahuasca and DMT that put me in that state where, yes, I had visuals, and we can talk about the funny aspects of that, but I got concrete clarity on some things that I couldn't have done without it.
I mean, what I see is that many times our mind gets caught in these loops, and for a lot of people, these are destructive loops where we keep telling ourselves, limiting stories, or I don't deserve happiness, I'm not good enough. And what ayahuasca does, it interrupts these patterns. What I like to think of these is that inner voice that tells you these limiting stories. I like to think that that's the ego, no? And what ayahuasca does, it really humbles you. It dissolves that ego, where that ego is no longer present, like in ceremony. And it's basically, you get to see the reality, and you get to have an encounter with your true self without having that interference of that voice messing you up. And you can look at trauma from a different perspective, wearing different lens, where it's not about reliving the pain and the suffering, but it's understanding why things happen in a particular way, no? So I'm always amused that people come down to the Amazon expecting, they really want to come and find the complex formula of the universe. And what I've found in my own personal experience is that the most profound teachings are the most simple ones. And they're the ones that are always there, but we're just numb to them. We don't see them. For me, the one recurring lesson that I get all the time from the medicine is to live with love. As simple as that. Once you really connect with that inner feeling of love, it's endless. It keeps going and going and going, no? So I can totally relate to the analytical mind. I'm an engineer by training. I work in finance. I was really good at numbers. And your mind, it can be your biggest ally, or it can be your biggest enemy. And it can really, trip you up and sabotage you, So when I work with the medicine, many times my work is to really, quiet the mind and just observe what the medicine is trying to teach me and what it's trying to show me, So yeah, I can relate to the analytical mind too.
It's funny. I'm starting to recall you and I had so many conversations, and I so greatly appreciate the friendship that we made, and also the time that you took with me and so many others. You really are. It's hard to know that about somebody until you're actually alongside them. This is a man that is super passionate about this. This is a very, very successful, wealthy man that is not about that at all, which is probably why he's so successful. He actually grants scholarships for people to come there. And by the way, what my plan is when I come out with my book, Bring Forth, I don't know, I want to charge like a nominal fee, but to fund people that want to go on this trip. So I want to join you in that. I want to try to fund 2 or 3 scholarships a year or something like that to the right person. We'll have to figure out how to do that. But I want to put this in context. One of the things that I was afraid of from the outside in, even after I had committed to it, and I remember speaking to you, we had a Zoom. He got on a Zoom with me, and I was probably like just trying to ask him questions about everything, like what's it going to be bringing up, what time should I get there, and all that stuff. And I just remember seeing him just in this calm state, And he was just kind of like, yeah, I mean, if you want to come, just come, you know. So that was kind of the way I saw him carry. But what is very hard to know, even if you hear about it, it's a very, very well organized, like to the point where when you get to this facility, which is called the Arcana Spiritual Center, he's got a facility in the one I went to in the Amazon jungle, you know, right off the river. He's got one in the Sacred Valley, you know, over by Machu Picchu, you know, and he's also, I think, in Mexico, Costa Rica. So, you know, this is a very, very big thing that's expanding, but he's doing it right. So just to put it in context, I've never felt so cared for and safe in this environment. So for those of you that are like, because I had this vision that I was going to like just be somewhere out in the jungle with like a mosquito net, you know, and fending off jaguars and things like that while I'm taking this. This is a very, very comfortable, organized place that is very, very safe, to the point where, just to give you context, when you're in ceremony, you know, we're all in there. I think we had 20, we started off with 23. I think we ended up with 21, just because a couple of people, you know, got lost, not lost in the jungle, just, you know, lost in their lives. But we're all in this room and we just are all deeply connected, sitting around in a circle. Lights are out. And in the middle of this circle are these aliens / magicians, you know, people. I've never met anybody in my life like these, you know, maestra and these shamans that, I got to be honest with you, and I don't want to put anybody else down, because I know that there's probably a lot of other great places, but I spent a lot of time researching Arcana, and I see a lot of people out there, you know, claiming that they're shamans and things like that. But I met people at your facility, like Louis, I think his name was, that has been, you know, called to this since he was 7, you know what I mean? And they live in the jungle and stuff. So let's talk a little bit about that experience, because when I was in there, I was guided by these people. I was protected by these people and your facilitators. Everything was taken care of so that I could have my experience. How did you set all that up? Because that's what, when I hear other people tell me their experience, they don't have it that way. How did you know to set that all up? And let's talk a little bit about the role of the shamans.
Well, the essence of the experience is to surrender really to the medicine. And the only way you can surrender is if you feel safe. So safety has to be the number one, you know, element in this equation. If you don't have that safety, people don't open up, and it's impossible to do the work. So, you know, being in other centers, like you know, I had the good fortune of ending up in a pretty reputable center in Iquitos when I went there, but it was different back then. You know, it was a little more rustic. The experience wasn't as fine-tuned. So in my case, I said, okay, we can take that as a starting point. And in all fairness, you know, this place Arcana, it's a center that used to exist under a different name. It was called Pulse Tours back then. And to be honest with you, I thought to myself, you know, I would have never started a center from scratch. You know, to build this kind of structure in the middle of the jungle, it's quite challenging. But given at some point after Wall Street, you know, I ended up doing hotels in Mexico, and I had that hospitality background, you know, that experience. So I said, I can definitely take this and turn it into, you know, the next level. No? And in my mind, feeling safe has different components. On the one hand, medically, you want to feel like nothing is going to happen to you, that, you know, you've got all the bases covered. At the same time, the facilities, they need to be comfortable enough where, like you say, you're not concerned, you know, more with mosquitoes as opposed to paying attention to the experience, you know, in the middle of ceremony. So this past year, or actually at the beginning of this year, 2022, we basically closed down the center for a few months and we remodeled it, and we made it, you know, like a really comfortable experience. No? And lastly, it's once you feel physically safe, once you feel that, medically, you got the bases covered, energetically, you need to feel safe. And that's, ending up to the role of the shaman. The role of the shaman, it's about maintaining a clean space, cleaning you, of your personal things that you carry with you that you may not even know you have them. And and that's key in this experience, no? Because when you run an ayahuasca ceremony, there's a lot of energies. You just said it. You're sharing the space with other 20 strangers, and these people come from all kinds of backgrounds, no? And they come with all kinds of energies to the ceremony. So in the ceremony, all these energies rise up, not to the surface, and it's the shaman's job to keep cleaning and cleaning and cleaning, so that you don't end up with anybody else's issues, no. And rather than you taking anything on, it's about releasing, trauma, releasing pain, releasing things from your past, no. So
Yeah, and that's important. I guess in the back of my analytical mind, looking from the outside in and hearing stories, I would hear stories from people they would say things like, oh, make sure you do this, make sure you do that. One of the most common questions or things people would say is like, if things get really, really dark, go towards it. And I'm like, why the hell would I do that? I just remember on the outside looking in, just because you don't know what you don't know. But I just want to let everybody know that, like, while you're in this experience, whether you're experiencing something very, very positive, which was my first night, or somewhat sad where you're potentially dealing with something that you think that you've resolved, but it still brings you sadness, but you've been tucking it away. That could happen too. But while that's happening, it's the shamans are guiding you, and you feel as if they're speaking to you. And Jose started this new event at in the experience where he allowed us to have full conversations and ask questions to the shamans, and it was translated. And it was interesting to hear them speak, because they were talking about what they were there for, and to some degree they were protecting us from negative energy, and talking about how much negative energy is in the world, and how they were protecting us from it, and guiding us. And it's really strange because at times, even though I think there were 5 of them chanting at the same time, I would pick up on one that I felt was speaking to me. So it was a very, very profound experience. I want to address one quick question from Krista that just came in. She's basically asking, she says, can you elaborate on the guidance given? That's just the guidance given for people that experience trauma, PTSD, because I saw that take place there, and man, those people. And shout out to you guys. You know who you are, because they're some of my best friends now. I saw them have massive breakthroughs. And also this idea of a woman, and I understand, Krista, what you're saying, because like, maybe I'm not a woman, but I felt like a woman going there by myself, like the way you're talking about it. I was scared, sounds like that's what you're saying. So specifically the safety of a woman traveling solo to the Amazon, so how would you address that? Because that would be an analytical outside in, concern.
sure. Ayahuasca is a process, and regarding the guidance for trauma and PTSD, we start off with intentions. At the beginning of the week, or the few weeks that people will be with us, we have meetings with each participant and the rest of the team, the shamans, the facilitators, and we really allow them to explain to us, why they're there, how can we help out. And the way we phrase it is, instead of focusing on the problem, we'd like to focus on the solution. Let's say that someone is dealing with trauma or depression, anxiety, and they say, oh, I want to get rid of my depression. Sometimes we may end up repeating the wrong mantra. And by saying, oh, I want to get rid of my depression, you lose the first part of the phrase, no? And you end up manifesting that depression onwards. So we ask them to phrase that intention in a positive way. We say, okay, if you were to get rid of that depression, what's on the other side? Is it freedom? Is it tranquility, peace, happiness? And focus on that. And we're talking about the same issue, but coming at it from a different angle. Now, the other thing that happens, as the week starts to progress is every morning after ceremony, we have group share. And in group share, that's when the integration process starts to kick in. When people try to articulate their experience the night before, and you listen to other people's experience, things start to make sense. On occasions, either the shamans or ourselves, will chime in, trying to help interpret, what they were experiencing in the night, and things start to make sense. I want to make it very clear: ayahuasca is not a magic overnight pill. To think that you're going to come, you're going to drink, 1 or 2 times, and it's going to solve all your problems. It's not. Ayahuasca is not going to heal you. You are going to heal yourself. Ayahuasca just sets the stage where you can, like I said, observe these situations that you've experienced in your life from a different perspective, from a different angle, disassociated from that pain, where you can actually go to the root cause. Western medicine, when we go to a psychiatrist and we're experiencing depression, they'll give you a pill, and that's only going to blunt and numb the pain, but it doesn't really go to the root cause. Ayahuasca goes one step farther. It allows you to see, what is the root cause and tackle that from the roots. So that's what I can say about guidance, and like I said, 50% of the work you're going to do at the retreat, and 50% you're going to do back home in the integration, and that's actually the most important part of this. During the retreat, we organize different activities that are going to help you and guide you through the integration process, so that when you go back home, things are easier, and the process continues to unfold. Now, regarding the last question about safety for women traveling solo into the Amazon, we've all heard these stories of women being abused by shamans, and to some degree, a lot of them, they're true. These sort of things happen, and this is why you want to be very careful and vetting the place that you're actually going to be drinking. When we drink ayahuasca, we put ourselves in a very vulnerable state. So that's why you want to be surrounded by people who really care, for the work they're doing. They're very ethical, and they're impeccable in their service. So in our case, I'd like to say that 65 to 70% of the people that come to Arcana, they're solo travelers. When people travel outside of the States, it's about, using common sense. And the same kind of things you would do when you travel to any country, basically. You don't walk out in the middle of the night, in shady parts of town. It's really easy to come into contact with other people who are going to be at the same retreat, people that are going to be your very intimate friends at some point. And it's about, spending time with them before and after the retreat. So the experience can be very safe as long as you do your proper due diligence and end up going to like a reputable place.
I love it. So I want to address a couple of things. So first of all, quickly, Krista, not only are there women shaman, but like the big cheese shaman is a woman, and she, Justina, who is just one of the most amazing humans ever. And I don't know if we'll have time, but Jose told me how he met her, and she really has become a mother to him. As far as the safety goes and some of those stories that you've heard, like I said, I became friends with people that were like me, and I met people that on the first day were so incredibly traumatized and fragile and afraid of everything. And if any of them were here right now, they would explain to you that this was a very, very safe, controlled space for them to have a massive breakthrough. Jose, I don't know how you identify. Oh, there's my father-in-law from South Africa. What's up, Johan? how would you answer this question? Robert is asking about, if somebody's taking antidepressants and things like that. A lot of people read that they're incompatible with plant medicine and medications and things like that. How do you address that? Somebody that might be afraid of getting off of meds and things like that.
I mean, yes, they are incompatible. It's really dangerous to mix antidepressants specifically with ayahuasca because the combination can be lethal. So basically, what happens in those situations, we require people to get off of them. It's very important not to drop them, overnight, because there can be some withdrawal symptoms. So what we advise them to do is every medication has a half-life. This is the amount of time that the medicine is still in your system. So based on this medication half-life, we advise them as to how far in advance they need to suspend the medication. For some medications, it may be 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and we ask them to talk to their prescribing physician so they can come up with a wean-off schedule, so they can gradually, decrease the dose until the point where they actually suspend the medication, well in advance of the ayahuasca retreat. When we think about safety and doing ayahuasca, that's what I tell people. Doing ayahuasca right is paying attention to the medications, suspending them when you're supposed to, and also not doing ayahuasca. And if you're one of those contraindications, there's some mental diseases, specifically schizophrenia, bipolar. And for these people, it's not a good idea to do ayahuasca. In the case of bipolars, you could say it's like a coin toss. 50% of the people will heal, and 50% this can bring in, negative consequences, bringing in paranoia and manic phases. So that when I say, doing ayahuasca right, those are the two components: paying attention to the medications and not doing it if you fall into one of these contraindications.
Well said. Well said. And it's important. This is one of the things. It's like, I'm sharing with you from my personal experience that this is one of the most transformative, profound things that I've ever done in my life, which would prompt people that know me to say, I want to do that too. But it's not for everybody. And when you look at the parameters, what I learned is that Jose and his team, and doing it in this perfectly safe, well executed environment, they're just saying, to have the best experience, this is what it is. They're not telling you their opinion. You know what I mean? So that's important. So many other questions that people have, and I just want to put a bow on a lot of those technical questions. All I can tell you is that even while completely lucid, I met people there that are just like some of you and had the same questions that, just had pivotal experiences, So another answer, as somebody said, is Justina, the female shaman at the jungle. Yeah. Well, of course she is, because that's how I met her, because I was there. And so many just massive breakthroughs there. And I also want to give you guys insight into the fact that it's not just like Jose and the shamans. He's got these, I give a shout out to Billy and Carolina and Dave and Daniela and Alex, these facilitators that are just alien creatures from another world as well, that are just like the most stoic, nonverbal, listening, comforting people in the world. So, this is a conversation that obviously could go on for like 3 hours, but I want to, keep it moving in a direction. So another thing that was happening there, so we had the experience, and a lot of people want to know some of the particulars, like, I drank the ayahuasca, just to give you the technical stuff that you hear about. And, it's not like 30 minutes later something happens, right? I want you guys to know that while I'm sitting in ceremony, there were times where I was just completely conscious, and like to the point where I could turn to you and have a full conversation while something profound was going on. So it's nothing like the drug, mindset that a lot of people have. As a matter of fact, one night, um, I was 3 hours into it and I said, oh, it kind of, it was fun, but I don't think anything happens, and then all of a sudden I heard some sort of I think Billy was playing the harp and it just triggered me. And all of a sudden, 3 hours later, I had the most profound visual and experience and, breakthrough that I had. But while I was there and also on the outside looking in, something that my trained and learned mind was very, very afraid of, yet very, very curious about. And I know a lot of people find out about this. There was an other option there. And I know it's something that's very, very dear to your heart, that you guys call Sapo, which is, from, I believe it's from the bufo frog. But I kept hearing about it, and it's just a much, much more accelerated DMT experience. And I got to say, it scared me, so when I first got there, people say, are you going to do Sapo? Are you going to do Sapo? And I said, oh no, that's not why I came here, and I was protecting myself from it. And I was probably doing that because I'm a dad and I have a lot of responsibilities. But then I sat and I started to listen to Jose explain what it was. And I saw people that I would very, very much respected, friends of mine, do it and come and tell me it was the most profound thing that's ever happened to them. So, I went up to Jose one day and I said, hey, by the way, I've decided to do Sapo. And he kind of laughed and he goes, yeah, I know you were going to do it, but let's talk a little bit about this, because this is kind of outside the realm of ayahuasca and it's not something everybody has to do. But I will say that I did experience this, and very hard to explain, but it's probably the most amazing thing I've ever experienced in my life. One that the trained analytical mind would probably look at the wrong way. But just tell us a little bit about Sapo, because this is another form of medicine. And I got to tell you, there were two people on our trip, and they know who they are, that were really, really struggling in life. And they were really seeking answers. And it wasn't really happening for them after the first two ceremonies. But then they did Sapo and everything shifted. So what is Sapo, and why is it such an effective thing to work with?
Sapo is it's a medicine that's very dear to my heart. It's a medicine that I started working with about, I would say, 10 years ago. Well, actually, it was 8 years ago. Once I started working with ayahuasca, then I continued with Sapo. Sapo comes from a toad. It's called the Sonoran Desert toad. And this toad lives in the Sonoran Desert in the border of the United States and Mexico. And the toad contains this venom called, that has this alkaloid called 5-MeO-DMT. The DMT in Sapo is very different than the DMT in ayahuasca. You could say they're distant cousins, but they're not very related. Words fall very short in describing the Sapo experience. I can really try, but the best explanation I've heard of Sapo, it's in 2 words, and it's universal orgasm. It's a colleague of mine coined that, and I actually find it quite accurate, and that's the easiest or the most precise way of describing Sapo. Sapo is really good at unclearing blockages that we may carry that ayahuasca hasn't quite gotten to them. Sapo, it really flushes all that from your system. So for a lot of people, like you say, Sapo is like the highlight of the retreat, or it's actually the turning point. Because like I said, once those blockages are cleared, it's easier to connect with the medicine, with ayahuasca, and to continue doing the work. We're actually one of the few centers, ayahuasca centers, that actually do Sapo, because I do believe that they really complement each other, the two medicines, ayahuasca and Sapo. Another way to think about Sapo is also, it's one thing for the rational mind to try to get your arms around the concept of we are all one, and we're all this one energy, and it almost sounds cliche. with Sapo, every single cell of your being remembers that. And I say it remembers because I truly believe it's something we've already known, you know, all the time, but we just get to, with all these programs put on to us by society, we forget what that is. I do believe that we are energy, that we're just wearing these earth suits. And Sapo gives you an opportunity to go back to source, to where your energy, merges with everyone else's, and you get to experience that, and a lot of people get really curious about it when they come out of their experience. They say, how long was I in? And I find that irrelevant, because when you're in the experience, it's a brief moment of eternity. There's no time, there's no body. It's only energy, and you're there with everything, no? And everything is you. So, yeah, SUP was really, really effective. It's like a straight shot. And I'd like to say it does the job, and it heals a lot of people in many different ways. So.
Yeah. My take on it. First of all, the people that were asking if people are scared and is this a safe place, just hear me and know that I was afraid of that, and the experience and getting to know them and getting to know Jose and being in the environment gave me the space to say, I'm going to say yes to it. So that's one way of looking at it. I actually have a little video clip that I want to show you of me. I had my friend, his actual name is Adam, and he's from Australia. And the funny thing is that for the first half of the trip, I was calling him for some reason Gary. So I actually call him Gary Adams now. But he took my phone and videotaped me doing sapos. I'm just going to show you a little clip, but just to put it in context, I sat there, and Jose was right next to me, and this just angel from heaven, Carolina, they're on either side of me. They prepared it, and I felt very, very comfortable and safe about it. I had a big smile on my face. So I breathed it in, and it was like a vapor of sorts. And what you'd see if you watch the whole video, and I'll show that to you when I make the documentary, is I lay down very, very peacefully, a huge smile on my face. But what you don't know is that I'm not there. So I'm, as far as I can explain it, just flying through the sky and seeing colors and just experiencing something that's unexplainable, but I'm completely out of my body and my analytical mind and experiencing the world without it. But when I came back, and that's what you're going to see in this video, it's just about a minute long, I experienced a level of peace and gratitude that I've never, ever, ever experienced in my life, to the point where you'll see what happens when somebody comes back from Sapo. So let's see if this works, and hopefully it works with sound. Now, what I can tell you is that I've never in my life hugged anybody or been so happy as I was that day. Unbelievable. So, I'm looking through the chat. We're coming up to the top of the hour, and I'm probably going to have a part 2 with Jose, and there's so many more things that we want to talk about, like the future for ayahuasca, and I'll ask you a question about that. Future of plant medicine, because if we're not careful, how humans are. We're seeing people do it the wrong way now. when you're in Peru, you can buy some of these things in the store, right? And there's a lot of danger associated with that. And then there's this, the drug trade out there that's trying to take advantage of things. So there's so many different components, but I just want you to know before I forget that Jose is kind of like, I would look at as a guardian of the truth. And it's, its most pristine, pure state. So when you go to Arcana, who knows what's going to happen in the world? Because, that's just out of our control. But when you go to Arcana, and I met people that went to other facilities on my plane and they didn't have the same experience. But when you go to Arcana Spiritual Center, you're going to not only have an amazing experience, but you're going to do it the right way as well. I see a lot of people talking about, that you're going to experience some downtime and some hard work. One of my friends from California, Alex, who was there for 3 weeks, so jealous when I left and those guys were staying. I said to Alex, I said, "What's it like?" And he says, "Well, it ain't no fucking vacation." That was funny because it was a lot of work. It was deep work. And that's why it was so profound. So let's, and a lot of people are talking about how people are doing ayahuasca and sapo without shamans, and I just want everybody to know that I don't know what that's like, but this is not something that you should be just winging and doing. And if your friend down the street tells you that he went to the jungle for 2 weeks and he's a shaman now, that's what you should be afraid of. You should be really understanding that this is a guy that's doing it right. But let's talk a little bit about the future of plant medicine and stuff, because, you're somebody that for 6 years has been running this facility. So you have a lot of understanding about how popular it's getting and how it's getting mainstream. We're seeing it pop up maybe in the future in music festivals and all that stuff. What do you see as the future for plant medicine, and what needs to be done to maintain its purity?
I mean, yes, the things have changed dramatically. Like when I first started doing ayahuasca, it was back in 2013. When I went back to Mexico and I was talking to friends about ayahuasca, no one knew what ayahuasca was. It was something completely foreign to them. And fast forward a few years, and now there's ayahuasca ceremonies, in major cities. You can find them very easily. Weekend ceremonies, that kind of thing. I think there was also like an inflection point, like in 2018. There was Michael Pollan came out with a book called How to Change Your Mind. And that really brought a lot of attention to the psychedelic space. Like I said, for a long time, psychedelics were considered this taboo thing, it's drugs. And when this book came out, it started, garnering the interest of everyday people, people maybe well in their, middle age or even older, and they started thinking about, whether psychedelics were for them, no? Then you started having all these research projects in the States, Johns Hopkins, NYU. Most of these research projects were based in psilocybin. But in some degree, they're very similar. Psilocybin, ayahuasca, and some of these other natural plant medicines. So, yes, these medicines are coming mainstream now. Now you see Aaron Rodgers come out and say, "Oh, it was doing ayahuasca was a big part of him, winning the Super Bowl and being the MVP and all that." So we need to be very careful into how we approach this space going forward. One is we need to, with all this popularity, obviously ayahuasca is going to become scarce, if people don't plant more vine. No? An ayahuasca vine has to grow for at least 6 or 7 years before you can actually cut it and use it and make it into a brew. Like 3 or 4 years ago, we started our own ayahuasca plantation, because I believe, being responsible in its use means if you cut one vine, you need to plant 10 or more. and this is something that we plan to continue growing. No? There's a lot of centers in Iquitos and other places in the world, and not many have ayahuasca plantations. There's actually only a handful of us who do that. So it's really, really important to be ethical and be responsible in how we use this. And like you say, many people just come down for, we've had people who come and they facilitate with us for a few months. And then I find them, doing ceremonies with 50, 80 people down in Playa del Carmen, which I feel is completely irresponsible. No? There's also an issue as to cultural appropriation. No? In my case, I've done ayahuasca hundreds of times. I've never done the ayahuasca by myself without a shaman present, because I see the power of ayahuasca and the potential risk of opening doors that you need to be able to know, how to find your way back from those situations. And these shamans, Maestra Justina, our main shaman, she's been working with the medicine for 45 years. So becoming a shaman, it's hard work, and it's not something they do over a few months or, a year or two. It's something that they do. It's a lifetime choice that they do, no? And to become a good curandero, a good healer, they need to, work with plants for many, many years before they can actually serve it to other people and heal people with that. So I think we need to be very selective in how we use these plants, because otherwise we're going to end up with the same trouble that we ended up like back in the 60s, no? Where people were using them to get high as opposed to using them for healing, no? So
yeah, it's such an interesting concept as we kind of wrap up. I mean, listen, I've experienced and played with drugs back in my day, and it's been a long time, but I get it. There's a lot of curiosity in that and stuff. And, I don't regret all of those times. But it's just interesting to evaluate the world right now and looking things like alcohol and drugs and things like that, and just really observe what they're there for. And in some way, shape, or form, we could justify and say that we're doing it for enlightenment and things like that. But for the most part, they're some sort of a reactive thing, some sort of a distraction from how you're feeling. Or, and we see marijuana becoming legalized now, and people are using that as, I guess, a form of medicine, and that's a master plant. But when you start looking at medicine, what's interesting about it, and you can't really experience this unless you go to the Amazon jungle. You're looking at like trees that are just as the size of buildings, and you're just looking at nature in its ruined form yet, and things like that. And you just realize that the most just advanced form of technology, because we're trying to advance technology in medicine right now, but it's already there. The most advanced form of technology and medicine is already there. It's in nature. And when you walk through the Amazon jungle, with one of these people that are from the area, they basically show you that it's got everything that they need. He's like, oh, this is what we use for this, and this is what we use for that. You can eat from it and everything. So yeah, I think that we are probably, for the most part, just unconsciously on the hamster wheel going through life. And a lot of the questions that I see being asked are, is it right for me? Is it right for me? The truth is that you're not going to know what it's like for you unless you experience it. And that's not me telling you to go do that, but I'm just telling you that everybody has a different experience. When you go and you experience this, first of all, you don't have to do it, right? I saw some people drink a couple of nights and then not, and that was what was right for them. But it's something that you won't understand unless you try it. And that's very, very important to understand. So Jose, God, there's so many different angles that I want to go to in this. One last thing that I want to talk about before we close out is that I had a lot of trouble understanding before I did it until now, is this concept of, the female nature of ayahuasca. We refer to her as Mother Ayahuasca or a grandmother. So that was one thing. But while I was in ceremony, I was having all sorts of visuals. I remember this one moment where I looked at my buddy next to me in the bed next to me. I thought I was fine. And then I looked at my friend Mateo from Zambia, like all of a sudden turned into a 900-pound giant. Like that kind of stuff happens, right? That's fun. But Jose taught me something really interesting. Is like, he says, sometimes the visuals that you get are very, very distracting from the message. And I took his advice, and I started to find that I could speak to the medicine and ask her questions and get responses. Now that is something that I don't think somebody that's never experienced it could experience. But while I was in ceremony and seeing things and feeling things, I was actually having a conversation with it and asking very specific questions about me and getting answers. How do you explain that?
Well, I mean, that's part of the mystique of this medicine, no? Some people say, "Oh, it's your higher self talking back to you," but that's pretty arguable, no? Regarding the nature of ayahuasca, whether it's a she or a he, it's quite fascinating because in the Peruvian tradition, it's a she. In the Colombian tradition, they refer to it as a he, yahe. So, there are differences in the plants, but for most people report back that they see a female presence or they see a female figure, usually as a grandmother. In my case, I'm not a very visual guy. I'm more auditory. I have these conversations. And I always tell people, when you work with ayahuasca, it's about encouraging that interaction, as opposed to just being a passive observer of things that are shown to us. It's about interacting with the medicine. And I tell people, yes, it's always good to have an intention, but you want to have a list of questions in your back pocket, because sometimes our intentions are answered pretty quickly at the start of ceremony, and you want to make the most of your time sitting with the medicine. So you can, ask questions and she'll definitely answer. So it's hard to explain to a rational mind, I'm going to give you this plant and you're going to have this conversation with this entity, which happens to be a female. But that's part of the beauty of it, that I remember, like in the first week when I was doing ayahuasca at this other retreat, there was a young doctor from Columbia University, and the guy, he was trying to make sense of all these things that he was experiencing in ceremony. He was trying to, his scientific mind, make rational sense, and I was always amused by that, because at some point I told him, you need to welcome the possibility of magic in the world. Because if you try to explain everything with science, you're going to find yourself, going down the rabbit hole, and no one has definite answers for that, At some point, like if you open up to the fact that, magic exists in this universe, things are going to be a lot easier to digest, So
you're speaking my language. So just to put a bow on that, most of the questions that everybody that has never done it are asking, you're asking from your human brain that has been programmed, to be that way. So I wrote something. This is an excerpt from the book that I'm writing about it, and I think this will kind of help you. So I said, I asked for strength. This is my relationship with Mother Ayahuasca. I asked for strength, and she gave me difficulties to overcome. I asked for wisdom, and she gave me problems to solve. I asked for significance. That was a big one I asked. I asked for significance, and she showed me I was no better than others. I asked for courage, and she gave me dangers to overcome. I asked for love. And she gave me troubled people to help. I asked for the experience of a lifetime, and she showed me that being alive is just that. So take that I got the chills when I read that, because that's where I'm at. And I was doing a testimonial for Arcana at the end. And one of the things that I explained to the cameras, I said, I just finished our closing ceremony, which is very sad to say goodbye to those people. And I witnessed 21 people all looking at each other saying, we're coming back again. So if anybody wants to know, like, I don't know what odds you need, but all 21 people on my trip said, we're coming back again and we want to do it. And I understand how percentages work out, but I can for one tell you that I am. So when my book comes out, and when we start raising some of those funds, we're going to invite some people to come back. I will be going back at the same time next year, but this time for 2 weeks. So I'm excited. I hope you'll be there. And I just want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule. I know that you're finally got some time at home, and you traveled to San Francisco, and you're, expanding the awareness and the reach. And thanks for being here. And just thank you so much for putting all the blood, sweat, and tears into creating this experience for people like me to have such a breakthrough. Thank you, my friend.
It's my real pleasure, and I do it with all my heart, my passion. I never expected that I was going to be running ayahuasca centers in the middle of the jungle, but I guess the universe had other plans for me, and I've never found myself as happy as living in plenitude as I do now. And to me, to witness every week how people come and get their lives transformed, it's just a validation of the work we do, and it gives me all the strength to keep going, to keep expanding, to doing things right, making it more accessible for more people to come and heal, and I'm really excited to see what you're going to write from the Sapo experience, from ayahuasca. I can't wait.
Well, I love and appreciate you, my brother, and I'm looking forward to our friendship. And I just say goodbye and a great morning, great afternoon to everybody. As a reminder, this will end up being, this is in the Rise Up with Dragon community in our Facebook page, but we will also have an edited version with a lot of other fun videos that will go on YouTube. This will also show up probably next week sometime on our podcast in audio format, and will sound much better and much cleaner in there. And that's Rise Up with Dragon on all platforms. I do a morning show that is about 5 to 15 minutes. It's live here, streamed, and that's Monday through Friday. And I challenge anybody to use that as a morning routine and check-in. And those show up on the podcast as well. Love and appreciate you, my friend. Thanks again for being here. And thank you, everybody, for taking time to be with us today. Bye for now.
Thanks.